Chapter 1. Calculated Moves. Marcus Stark learned early in life that the most dangerous people weren't the ones who screamed their threats from rooftops. They were the ones who smiled while sharpening their knives behind their backs. At 34, he'd built a career as a behavioral data analyst for corporate risk assessment, a job that taught him to read patterns in human behavior the way some people read sheet music. Every decision, every choice, every lie left a trail. That's why, on a crisp October morning 6 weeks before his son's first birthday, Marcus sat in his home office reviewing 18 months of documentation with the methodical precision of a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. His modest 2-story house in suburban Connecticut hummed with the quiet domesticity he'd fought hard to build. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating stacks of organized folders, each labeled with dates and categories. Text message screenshots, email threads, bank statements, witness testimonies from neighbors, pediatric appointment records, even grocery receipts that told stories more revealing than any confession. "You're doing it again," came a soft voice from the doorway. Marcus looked up to find Natalie Marks leaning against the frame, 2 mugs of coffee in her hands. She was everything his ex-wife wasn't: genuine, patient, and actually capable of putting someone else's needs first. They'd met at a community center where she taught art classes, and their relationship had grown slowly, carefully, like trust should. "Doing what?" Marcus asked, though he knew exactly what she meant. "That thing where you disappear into your head and start running scenarios." Natalie crossed the room and set a mug beside him, her warm brown eyes studying his face. "Talk to me." Marcus leaned back in his chair, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Chelsea called again yesterday. 3rd time this week. She keeps fishing for information about Liam's party, asking about the guest list, the venue, whether my parents are coming. She's his mother, Marcus. Isn't it natural for her to?" "Natalie." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. "Chelsea hasn't asked about Liam's actual well-being once. Not about his development milestones. Not about whether he's sleeping through the night. Not about his new tooth. She asks about the party because she wants to know who'll be there to witness whatever she's planning." Natalie sank into the chair across from him, concern creasing her forehead. "You really think she's going to try something?" Marcus picked up his phone and pulled up a spreadsheet he'd been maintaining. "Look at the pattern. 6 months ago, she started posting on social media about how much she missed Liam, despite having ignored him for weeks. 4 months ago, she filed a motion to modify custody, which failed, and her lawyer bills spiked. 3 months ago, she started making comments to mutual acquaintances about how worried she was about Liam's environment. 2 months ago, she began cozying up to people in family law circles." He met Natalie's eyes. "She's building a narrative, laying groundwork. And it's all leading to something. But the custody agreement is solid. You have primary custody because she abandoned him, Marcus." The courts saw through her. "Chelsea doesn't play by rules she doesn't like. She rewrites them." Marcus set down his phone and reached for a file folder. "I've spent the last year documenting everything because I knew this was coming. I just didn't know what form it would take. So what are you going to do?" A small smile touched Marcus's lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm going to let her make her move. And when she does, I'm going to be ready." Upstairs, a baby monitor crackled to life with the sound of Liam stirring from his morning nap. Marcus's expression immediately softened, the calculating analyst giving way to a father's love. That transformation was what made him dangerous to people like Chelsea. He'd burn the world down for his son, but he'd do it methodically, legally, and with receipts. "I'll get him," Natalie offered, standing. "Thanks. I need to make a call anyway." As she left, Marcus pulled out his personal phone, not the one Chelsea had the number for, and scrolled to a contact he'd been cultivating for 8 months. The call connected after 2 rings. "Mr. Stark, I wondered when I'd hear from you." "Hello, Ms. Riley," Marcus said, his tone respectful. "I think it's time we had that meeting we discussed." Chapter 2. The Architecture of a Marriage's End. 18 months earlier, Marcus Stark's life had looked perfect on paper. He'd married Chelsea Orozco 5 years prior in a ceremony that her Instagram followers had called goals. She was beautiful, charismatic, and came from a family with the kind of old money connections that opened doors. He was the rising star at a prestigious analytics firm, young and successful enough to be impressive, but not so established that he'd become boring. Their wedding album told a story of champagne toasts and designer dresses. What it didn't show was Chelsea's fury when the open bar ran out of her preferred vodka, or the way she'd berated a teenage waitress to tears over a minor plate mix-up, or how she disappeared for 3 hours with her ex-boyfriend Todd Brewer while guests awkwardly made small talk. Marcus had seen the warning signs. He'd built his career on reading behavioral patterns, after all, but he'd made the classic mistake of thinking he was the exception to the rule, that his love could change her, that beneath her narcissistic tendencies was someone who wanted to be better. The pregnancy had been unplanned, and Chelsea's reaction had been telling. "I'm not ready to be fat and unemployed," she'd said, scrolling through her phone rather than looking at the positive test. She worked as a social media influencer, or more accurately, she pretended to work while living off Marcus's income and her trust fund disbursements. "We can make this work," Marcus had said, already calculating budgets and revised timelines in his head. "I'll take paternity leave. We can hire help if you need it." "You're not listening. I don't want this." But by then it was too late, or so Chelsea claimed. Marcus had his suspicions about whether she'd actually forgotten her pills or if the pregnancy had been a calculated move for some purpose he hadn't yet determined. Everything with Chelsea was a transaction. The pregnancy had been hard. Chelsea complained constantly but refused to follow doctor's orders, skipping appointments and ignoring dietary restrictions. Marcus found himself becoming the primary parent before Liam was even born, attending birthing classes alone, reading every parenting book he could find, preparing the nursery while Chelsea took me-time trips to spa resorts with her friends. Liam arrived 3 weeks early, perfect and tiny and completely helpless. Marcus held his son for the first time in the hospital room while Chelsea scrolled through the photos her friend Brandy Bond had taken during labor, complaining about her angles. "We need to retake these," Chelsea muttered. "My face looks swollen." "You just gave birth," Marcus said, unable to tear his eyes from Liam's face. "You're beautiful." "He's beautiful. Don't patronize me." "God, can you take him? He's crying again, and my head is killing me." That first night set the pattern. Marcus handled every feeding, every diaper change, every midnight cry. Chelsea complained about the difficulty of motherhood while doing none of the actual work. When they brought Liam home, she immediately retreated to the guest room, claiming she needed sleep to recover. She never moved back into their bedroom. The next 3 months were a blur of sleepless nights and growing resentment. Marcus had taken his paternity leave and fallen completely in love with his son. Every tiny milestone, the first smile, the first time Liam's hand wrapped around his finger, the way the baby's eyes lit up when Marcus walked in the room, filled him with purpose. Chelsea, meanwhile, became increasingly absent. She'd leave for hours without explanation, came home smelling of expensive perfume and other people's cologne. Marcus found hotel charges on their credit card, social media posts she'd tagged in locations nowhere near where she'd said she was going. "I need to live my life, Marcus," she'd snap when confronted. "I'm not going to be some frumpy housewife just because we have a kid. I'm not asking you to be a housewife. I'm asking you to be a mother. I am a mother. I carried him for 9 months. Don't I get any credit for that?" The breaking point came when Liam was 4 months old. Marcus had returned from a grocery run to find the house empty and Liam screaming in his crib, his diaper unchanged for hours. Chelsea had left him alone to attend a party. No note, no text, no explanation. That night, Marcus activated the nanny cam system he'd quietly installed 2 weeks earlier after noticing other concerning patterns. What he recorded over the next month would eventually win him primary custody, but the emotional cost of watching Chelsea's neglect in real time nearly broke him. She'd leave Liam crying while she took selfies in the next room. She'd forget to feed him because she was busy arguing with someone on the phone. Marcus later learned it was Todd Brewer, her ex-boyfriend turned affair partner. She'd have people over late at night, their loud voices and laughter drowning out the baby monitor she never bothered to check. When Marcus finally filed for divorce and emergency custody, Chelsea's mask slipped completely. The beautiful influencer became something uglier, vindictive, calculating, and dangerous. "You're going to regret this," she'd hissed during their last face-to-face conversation before the lawyers got involved. "I'll take everything from you. The house, the money, and especially Liam. You think any court is going to choose a father over a mother?" But Marcus had documentation. Hours of video footage. Text messages she'd sent complaining about having to babysit her own child. bank records showing she'd spent thousands on herself while letting Liam's diaper supply run empty, testimony from their pediatrician about missed appointments and concerning patterns. The custody hearing had been brutal but conclusive. Chelsea was granted supervised visitation and ordered to pay modest child support, which she never paid. She fought it tooth and nail, hiring and firing 3 different lawyers, each time claiming the system was biased against mothers. When she finally lost, she did something Marcus hadn't anticipated. She disappeared. For 2 months, she didn't call, didn't visit, didn't even text to ask about Liam. She moved in with Todd Brewer, a trust fund playboy who'd failed at 3 different businesses and had his own checkered history. Marcus had used that time to build his new life. He'd bought the house, arranged flexible work-from-home options with his employer, and slowly learned to be both father and mother to a baby who was starting to smile more, cry less, and show signs of thriving in a stable environment. Then, 6 months ago, Chelsea had reappeared, not with apologies or explanations, but with a new lawyer and a renewed custody battle. She claimed she'd been suffering from postpartum depression, undiagnosed and untreated, convenient now that she wanted sympathy. She posted tearful videos online about being separated from her baby boy by a controlling ex-husband. The judge hadn't been impressed. Marcus's documentation was too thorough, the pattern too clear. Chelsea's petition was denied. That's when Marcus started keeping even more detailed records. Because he'd learned something important about Chelsea over their years together. She never accepted defeat. She just changed tactics. And now, as Liam's first birthday approached, Marcus could feel her circling like a shark that had scented blood. Every phone call, every seemingly innocent question, every social media post was part of a larger strategy. He'd spent 18 months preparing for this moment. Now he just had to wait for her to make her move. Chapter 3. The Calm Before the Storm. The morning of Liam's first birthday party arrived with the crisp clarity of late November. Marcus had rented a space at a community center, neutral ground, public, with plenty of witnesses. The theme was simple, autumn animals and warm colors. Nothing too elaborate because Liam was 1 and wouldn't remember any of it anyway. But the guests would remember. And that's what mattered. Marcus's parents, Henry and Edith Stark, arrived early to help set up. Henry was a retired civil engineer, methodical and steady, traits Marcus had inherited. Edith had been a school principal, which meant she could spot manipulation and bullshit from a mile away. "She's really going to show up?" Edith asked, arranging plates on the buffet table with military precision. "She confirmed yesterday," Marcus replied, testing the sound system. Children's music played at a reasonable volume, not the club-level noise Chelsea would have preferred. "And you're sure about this plan of yours?" Henry's voice carried the careful concern of a father who'd watched his son navigate impossible situations before. Marcus met his father's eyes. "I'm sure. Trust me, Dad." Natalie emerged from the kitchen carrying a homemade birthday cake, chocolate with vanilla frosting, decorated with hand-painted woodland creatures. She'd spent hours on it, turning a simple cake into art. "This is beautiful," Edith breathed, admiring the details. "Liam won't appreciate it, but I will," Marcus said, squeezing Natalie's hand. "Thank you." Guests began arriving around 2. Daryl Crosby and his wife brought their 2-year-old daughter. Renee Davis, Marcus's college roommate turned lifelong friend, showed up with his partner, Austin Harden. The guest list was deliberately crafted. People who genuinely cared about Liam, who'd witnessed Chelsea's behavior firsthand, and who could serve as credible witnesses if needed. Liam, dressed in a tiny plaid shirt and jeans, was having the time of his life. He'd just started taking wobbly steps, and the open space of the community center gave him room to explore under watchful eyes. His laugh was infectious, drawing smiles from everyone. "He looks so much like you," Austin commented, watching Liam toddle between guests. "Poor kid," Marcus joked, but there was pride in his voice. "Let's hope he gets Natalie's personality instead of Chelsea's genes." Speaking of, Renee nodded toward the entrance. "The devil has arrived." Chelsea Orozco swept into the community center like she was making a red carpet entrance. She dressed for cameras that didn't exist, designer dress, expensive jewelry, hair and makeup perfect. Beside her was Todd Brewer, looking uncomfortable in a suit that cost more than most people's rent. "There's my baby." Chelsea's voice carried across the room, loud enough to make several people wince. She rushed toward Liam with her arms outstretched. Liam, who hadn't seen his mother in 2 months, looked confused. He turned away and reached for Marcus instead. Chelsea's smile tightened. "He doesn't recognize me," she said, loud enough for people to hear. "It's been so long since I've been allowed to see him." "You've missed your scheduled supervised visits 3 times this month," Edith said coolly. "I know because I was supposed to supervise them." "I've been dealing with a lot," Chelsea said, her voice taking on a martyred tone. "It's hard being kept from your own child." Marcus watched his ex-wife work the room, hugging people who barely knew her, posing for photos she'd later post with captions about cherishing family moments. Todd stayed close, his hand possessively on her lower back, shooting resentful glares at Marcus. The party proceeded smoothly despite Chelsea's presence. Kids played, adults chatted, and Liam destroyed his smash cake with the gleeful abandon of someone discovering the joy of making a mess. Marcus captured it all on camera, noting how Chelsea positioned herself in every frame despite having done nothing to organize the event. As the party wound down and guests began leaving, Chelsea made her move. She approached Marcus near the coat check, Todd lingering a few feet away. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice suddenly lower, more intimate. "Privately. Anything you need to say to me can be said here," Marcus replied evenly. "Fine." Her smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "I need money. Your trust fund finally dry up?" "Don't be cute, Marcus. Todd and I are starting a business, and I need capital. $50,000 should cover it." Marcus almost laughed. "You want me to give you $50,000? For what exactly?" Chelsea leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper meant only for him. "Because if you don't, I'm going to call Child Protective Services. I'm going to tell them about your drinking problem, about how you leave Liam alone while you work, about the unsafe conditions in your house. I'm going to tell them about your anger issues and how you've threatened me. None of that is true. Doesn't matter." Her smile widened, revealing perfectly white teeth. "CPS investigates every claim. They'll take Liam while they investigate, and investigations can take months, maybe years. By the time you prove it's all lies, he won't even remember you. And I'll be the devoted mother who fought to save her son from an unfit father." Marcus felt ice water flood his veins. Not fear, he prepared for this, but rage at the casual way she was willing to weaponize the child protection system, to traumatize their son, to destroy innocent lives for money and spite. $50,000 in cash, Chelsea continued. "Untraceable. You have 3 days. Otherwise, I make the call." She stepped back, her voice returning to normal volume. "Thanks for the lovely party, Marcus. Liam looks so happy. We should do this more often." Todd gave Marcus a smug look as they turned to leave. "Chelsea," Marcus called out, his voice calm, preternaturally calm. "Don't leave yet. I need to make a phone call first." Something in his tone made her pause. "What?" "Just give me 5 minutes." Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolled to a contact, and hit dial. The call connected immediately. "Hello, Mr. Stark. Is it time?" "Yes. We're at the community center. Room 3B. I'll be there in 4 minutes." Marcus ended the call and looked at Chelsea, who'd gone from confident to confused. "You might want to stay. This concerns you." "What are you talking about?" "You'll see." The next 4 minutes felt like hours. Chelsea tried to maintain her composure, but Marcus could see the calculations running behind her eyes. Todd whispered something urgent in her ear. A few remaining guests, sensing drama, found reasons to linger. Then the door opened, and Angelina O'Reilly walked in. Chelsea's face went white. Actually white, the color draining so completely she looked like she might faint. "Hello, Ms. Orozco," Angelina said pleasantly. She was in her mid-40s, dressed professionally, carrying a leather portfolio. Behind her came 2 uniformed police officers. "You," Chelsea whispered. "Me," Angelina confirmed. "I believe we have a lot to discuss. And I think you should know, everything you just said to Mr. Stark was recorded, including your blackmail threat regarding false CPS reports." Chelsea's eyes darted to Marcus, then to the officers, then back to Angelina. I don't know what you're talking about." "Ms. Orozco," Angelina said, her voice hardening. "I'm a senior caseworker with Child Protective Services. And for the past 8 months, I've been working with Mr. Stark to document your pattern of fraud, neglect, and abuse of the child welfare system. We need to talk about the false CPS reports you filed against 3 previous partners, the fraudulent insurance claims, and the systematic extortion pattern you've been running. This is entrapment. Chelsea shrieked, her composure shattering completely. You can't do this. It's not entrapment when you threaten to weaponize CPS for extortion money, one of the officers said, stepping forward. Chelsea Orozco, you're under arrest. As the officer began reading Miranda rights, Chelsea's eyes found Marcus. The look she gave him was pure venom. All pretense of motherly concern or victim had burned away to reveal the predator beneath. You set me up, she hissed. I protected my son, Marcus corrected. There's a difference. Todd tried to intervene, stepping between Chelsea and the officers. You can't just arrest her. This is harassment. We'll sue. Mr. Brewer, Angelina said crisply. You might want to contact a lawyer yourself. We have evidence you were aware of and participated in several of Ms. Orozco's schemes. Now step aside. As Chelsea was let out in handcuffs, still screaming about persecution and rights violations, the remaining party guests stood in stunned silence. Even Liam had gone quiet, sensing the tension in the room. Henry Stark was the first to move, walking over to Marcus and placing a hand on his shoulder. Son, you want to tell us what the hell just happened? Marcus picked up Liam, holding his son close as he watched the police car drive away. How about we clean up here first, and then I'll explain everything over coffee. It's a long story. I've got time, Edith said, though there was approval in her eyes. And something tells me it's going to be a good one. Natalie appeared at Marcus's other side, taking his hand. You knew she was going to try this? I knew she was going to try something, Marcus admitted. I just prepared for every possibility I could think of, including this one. As they began gathering plates and decorations, Liam still babbling happily in his arms, Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The first chapter of Chelsea's downfall was complete. But as Angelina had indicated with that meaningful look before leaving, there was much more to this story. And all of it was about to come to light. Chapter 4, The Evidence Room. The next morning, Marcus sat across from Angelina O'Reilly in a small conference room at the Department of Children and Families office. The walls were covered in cheerful posters about child safety that seemed at odds with the serious conversation about to unfold. Thank you for coming in so quickly, Angelina said, opening her portfolio to reveal thick stacks of documentation. I know yesterday was intense. That's one word for it, Marcus said wryly. How's Chelsea handling lockup? About as well as you'd expect. Lots of demands, threats of lawsuits, claims that she's being framed. Todd Brewer posted her bail around midnight, so she's out pending arraignment. Angelina's expression darkened, which means we need to move quickly. I wanted to walk you through what happens next and make sure you understand the full scope of what we've uncovered. Over the next hour, Angelina laid out a pattern of behavior that was breathtaking in its calculated cruelty. Chelsea hadn't just been a bad mother to Liam. She'd been running variations of the same con for nearly a decade. Her first documented case was 8 years ago, Angelina explained, pulling out a file. She was dating a man named Stephen Graham, a software developer. Successful guy, good income. After 6 months together, Chelsea claimed she was pregnant, got him to sign a lease on an expensive apartment, co-sign a car loan, and give her access to his credit cards. 3 months later, she miscarried, except medical records show she was never pregnant. Stephen was devastated. She disappeared, and he was left with thousands in debt. Jesus, Marcus muttered. It gets worse. 2 years later, different city, she dated a commercial real estate agent named Dwight Sawyer. Same pattern, claimed pregnancy, extracted money and resources, then disappeared. Except this time, when Dwight got suspicious and started asking questions, Chelsea filed a false police report claiming domestic violence. Marcus felt sick. What happened to him? His career was nearly destroyed. Even after the charges were dropped, security camera footage proved he was in another state during the alleged incident. The stigma followed him. He lost clients. His reputation took a massive hit. Angelina's jaw tightened. Chelsea moved on to victim number 3. The pattern repeated with minor variations. A restaurateur named Morris Moon. A physician's assistant named Jimmy Hunt. Each time, Chelsea would target successful men, establish a relationship, and then leverage pregnancy claims, abuse allegations, or custody threats to extract money or resources. And if that failed, she'd file false CPS reports against them if they had children from previous relationships. The problem, Angelina continued, was that these incidents occurred in different jurisdictions. No one connected the dots until your case landed on my desk. I saw the patterns in your documentation and started digging. Once I knew what to look for, the trail became clear. How did you verify all this? Countless hours of research, interviews, and cross-referencing databases. I contacted each victim, those I could find. Some had moved, changed names, tried to leave their encounters with Chelsea in the past. But once I explained what I was investigating, they all wanted to help. Angelina pulled out another stack of files. We have testimony from 5 previous victims willing to go on record. Medical records proving false pregnancy claims. Police reports that were eventually dismissed. And in your case, we have her on recording attempting extortion using CPS as a weapon. Marcus thought about the day he'd first contacted Angelina 8 months ago. He'd been researching family court patterns for his custody case and had come across an article she'd written about the weaponization of child protective services. On a hunch, he'd reached out, shared his documentation and suspicions about Chelsea's past behavior. I couldn't promise anything, Angelina had told him during that first meeting. But if your ex-wife has the pattern you suspect, and if I can verify it, we might be able to prevent her from doing this to someone else. Now, sitting in this conference room with evidence of Chelsea's decade-long crime spree, Marcus felt a grim satisfaction mixed with anger at how long she'd gotten away with it. The district attorney's office is building their case, Angelina said. With your recording from yesterday and the pattern of previous victims, they're confident they can make charges stick. Extortion, fraud, filing false police reports, child endangerment based on her documented neglect of Liam. She's looking at serious prison time. And Todd? He's a more complicated situation. We can prove he knew about some of Chelsea's schemes. There are text messages where they discuss strategy. But determining his level of active participation versus willful ignorance is harder. The DA might offer him a deal if he testifies against her. Marcus leaned back in his chair, processing everything. There's something I don't understand. Chelsea comes from money, trust fund, family connections. Why run cons for comparatively small amounts? 50,000 here, 20,000 there. It doesn't add up. Angelina's expression shifted to something almost like pity. I wondered the same thing, so I did some digging into her background. The trust fund exists, but it's heavily restricted. Her grandfather set it up with conditions. She only gets distributions if she maintains certain standards. Stable employment, no criminal record, that kind of thing. Her family has a reputation to protect. So she burned through her distributions and needed cash that wouldn't show up on her family's radar. Exactly. She's also racked up significant debt, credit cards, personal loans, a failed online boutique that went bankrupt. Todd's in similar shape. His trust fund was cut off 2 years ago after his third failed business venture. They're both living far beyond their actual means, funding a lifestyle neither can afford. That explained the expensive clothes, the luxury vacations Chelsea posted on social media, the designer accessories. It was all smoke and mirrors, a carefully constructed facade hiding financial desperation. What happens now? Marcus asked. Chelsea's arraignment is scheduled for next week. In the meantime, we'll petition for a modification of her custody and visitation rights given the criminal charges and evidence of her intent to file false CPS reports. I'd be shocked if a judge allowed any contact with Liam until this is resolved. Angelina closed her files. As for you, Marcus, you should prepare for this to get ugly. Chelsea won't go down quietly, and she still has resources. Her family might rally around her, at least initially. I can handle ugly, Marcus said. I've been handling it for 2 years. I know you can. That's why we're in this position, because you documented everything, stayed 3 steps ahead, and didn't let emotion override strategy. Angelina smiled slightly. Between you and me? In 20 years of doing this job, I've seen a lot of false reports and weaponized CPS calls. It's one of the most destructive things someone can do, tie up resources investigating fake claims while real children in danger wait. Taking down someone who does it systematically? That's going to feel really good. After the meeting, Marcus drove to his parents' house. They'd kept Liam overnight so he could handle the aftermath of Chelsea's arrest without worrying about childcare. He found his son in the backyard with Henry, both of them examining leaves that had fallen from the oak tree. Dada, Liam squealed, abandoning the leaves to toddle over with arms outstretched. Marcus scooped him up, breathing in that unique baby smell of innocence and possibility. This was why he'd done it all: the documentation, the planning, the careful cultivation of evidence and allies. Not for revenge, though he wouldn't lie and say satisfaction wasn't part of it, but primarily for this: the ability to keep his son safe from a mother who saw him as a tool rather than a person. "How'd it go?" Henry asked, brushing dirt from his hands. "Long story. Where's Mom?" "Kitchen, making enough food for an army as usual." "Stress baking." They found Edith pulling a second batch of cookies from the oven, the kitchen counter already covered with cooling racks. She took one look at Marcus's face and said, "It's worse than we thought, isn't it?" "Yeah, but we're going to nail her for all of it." Over coffee and warm cookies, Liam gnawing happily on a baby-safe teething biscuit, Marcus explained what Angelina had revealed. His parents listened with growing horror as the scope of Chelsea's pattern became clear. "I knew she was bad," Edith said when he finished. "But this? Marcus, she's a sociopath." "Probably," Marcus agreed, "though I'm not qualified to diagnose her. What matters is we have enough to put her away and ensure she can't do this to anyone else." "What about that boy she's with?" "Todd." Henry's voice carried the particular disapproval of a man who'd worked his whole life and had no patience for trust fund failures. "Might flip on her. Might not. Either way, his association with Chelsea is going to cost him." Marcus watched Liam play with a wooden spoon, banging it on the table with delighted concentration. "The important thing is Liam's protected now. That's what this was always about." "You did good, son," Henry said gruffly. "Real good." Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Natalie. "Saw the news coverage. Are you okay? Want me to come over?" The arrest had made the local news. Local woman arrested on extortion and fraud charges, though they'd kept the CPS details vague to protect the investigation. Marcus could only imagine what Chelsea's social media followers were saying. He texted back, "I'm okay. At my parents' house. Maybe dinner tonight. I'll cook. Your place or mine?" "Mine." Liam's bedtime routine goes smoother in his own space. "Perfect. See you at 6. Love you." Marcus stared at those last two words. They hadn't said them yet. The relationship was still relatively new, and he'd been cautious about introducing serious emotions while dealing with Chelsea's chaos. But looking at them on his screen, he realized he felt the same way. "Love you too," he typed back. Edith, reading over his shoulder like the unrepentant snoop she was, smiled. "That girl's good for you." "Yeah, she is." "You gonna marry her?" "Mom, we've been dating less than a year." "So? I knew I was going to marry your father after 3 weeks." "That was a different generation," Henry interjected, though he was smiling too. "Love is love, regardless of generation." Edith refilled their coffee cups. "And that woman loves you and Liam both. Don't let Chelsea's poison make you afraid of good things." Marcus didn't respond, but his mother's words settled into his chest like a warm stone. She was right. He'd been so focused on protecting himself and Liam from Chelsea's toxicity that he'd almost forgotten what healthy relationships looked like. The rest of the day passed in comfortable domesticity. Liam napped, they had lunch, and Marcus started making calls to people who deserved to hear the full story directly from him. Renee and Austin, who'd witnessed the arrest. Daryl Crosby, who'd seen Chelsea's manipulation firsthand. His boss at work, to give a heads up that media attention might follow. Each conversation reinforced what he already knew. He had a support system Chelsea had never possessed because she'd burned every genuine relationship in her life. She collected people the way others collected things, useful until they weren't, then discarded without thought. By the time he headed home with Liam in the evening, Marcus felt the weight of the past 24 hours settling on his shoulders. Not regret, never regret, but exhaustion from carrying this plan alone for so long, and relief that it was finally in motion. Natalie arrived at 6 with grocery bags and an expression that told him she wasn't taking no for an answer. "You're going to sit, drink this wine, and play with your son while I make dinner. No arguments." "Yes, ma'am." She cooked while he and Liam built towers out of soft blocks, the domestic scene so normal it felt almost surreal after yesterday's drama. Over dinner, homemade lasagna that rivaled his mother's recipe, Natalie said, "I read the article about the arrest. They didn't mention CPS, but the comments section was interesting. Let me guess. Chelsea's playing victim online. Her friend Brandy posted a long rant about false accusations and witch hunts. Some other people jumped in defending you. It's a mess." Marcus shrugged. Let them talk. The truth will come out during the trial. You're not worried about public perception? Should I be? I've got documentation, witnesses, and the legal system on my side. Chelsea has Instagram followers and a talent for playing victim. I'll take my chances. Natalie reached across the table, taking his hand. I'm proud of you for being smart enough to see this coming and brave enough to do something about it. I just did what any parent would do. No, most parents would have reacted emotionally, gotten into screaming matches, made mistakes that could be used against them. You played chess while she was playing checkers, and you won because you kept your head. She squeezed his hand. That takes real strength. After dinner, after Liam was asleep and they were curled on the couch watching mindless television, Natalie said quietly, "What happens if her family gets involved? Rich people can afford really good lawyers. Then we'll deal with it." But Angelina says the evidence is overwhelming. Pattern crimes across multiple jurisdictions, recorded extortion attempt, medical records proving fraud. No lawyer can make that disappear, no matter how expensive they are. And you're sure she won't try something desperate? People with nothing to lose can be dangerous. Marcus thought about that, had thought about it extensively, actually. She's out on bail with conditions. Can't leave the state, can't contact me or Liam, has to surrender her passport. And Todd isn't exactly the criminal mastermind type. They'll lawyer up, try to cut deals, maybe attempt some character assassination through social media. But anything more dramatic than that would violate her bail and land her in jail before trial. You've really thought of everything. I tried to. And the stuff I didn't think of, Angelina helped with. That's why I spent 8 months building this case before springing the trap. Chelsea's smart in her own way, but she's also arrogant. She genuinely believed she could threaten me, and I'd just hand over cash to make the problem go away. Why didn't she just ask her family for money? Because then they'd know she needed it, and they'd want to know why. And that would mean admitting her lifestyle is unsustainable. Her relationship with Todd is a disaster, and she burned through her trust fund distributions. Chelsea would rather commit fraud than admit failure. They sat in silence for a while, the television murmuring in the background. Finally, Natalie said, "I meant what I texted earlier. I love you." Marcus pulled her closer. "I love you too. And when this is all over, when Chelsea's in prison and Liam's safe and we can finally breathe, I want to talk about our future. Really talk about it. I'd like that." Outside, the November wind rattled the windows, but inside Marcus's house, everything was warm and safe. For the first time in 2 years, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the nightmare was finally ending. He had no idea that the worst was still ahead. Chapter 5, The Counterstrike. The emergency hearing was scheduled for Friday afternoon, for days after Chelsea's arrest. Marcus sat in the family courtroom with his lawyer, Robbie Donaldson, a woman with 20 years of experience and a reputation for not suffering fools. Across the aisle, Chelsea had arrived with representation from her family's firm, Clark Sparks, a silver-haired attorney whose billable rate probably exceeded Marcus's monthly salary. Chelsea herself looked dramatically different from her arrest. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup. Instead, she wore a modest dress, minimal jewelry, and had styled her hair in a way that made her look younger and more vulnerable. It was a costume, Marcus knew, designed for the judge. All rise for the Honorable Judge Rebecca Briggs. The judge was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor. She'd seen every custody trick in the book, which gave Marcus hope. Chelsea's performance might work on social media followers, but family court judges were harder to fool. "We're here for an emergency modification of custody and visitation," Judge Briggs said, reviewing papers on her desk. "Ms. Donaldson, you represent the petitioner?" "Yes, Your Honor. My client, Marcus Stark, is requesting a complete suspension of Chelsea Orozco's visitation rights pending resolution of criminal charges filed against her. We have evidence that Ms. Orozco attempted to extort Mr. Stark by threatening false CPS reports, demonstrating both criminal intent and a willingness to weaponize the child welfare system." "Strong allegations," Judge Briggs said. "Mr. Sparks, Your Honor, we believe these charges are completely fabricated as part of Mr. Stark's ongoing campaign to alienate my client from her son." Clark Sparks stood smoothly, his voice carrying practiced authority. "Ms. Orozco has been fighting for adequate time with Liam since birth. Mr. Stark has used his resources and connections to paint her as an unfit mother when, in reality, She's a devoted parent being systematically shut out of her child's life. Marcus felt his jaw clench, but Robbie put a subtle hand on his arm, a reminder to stay calm and let her handle this. The recording Mr. Stark claims to have is taken out of context, Sparks continued. My client was expressing legitimate concerns about her son's welfare and discussing the possibility of involving CPS if those concerns persisted. That's not extortion, that's parental responsibility. Interesting interpretation, Judge Briggs said dryly. I've read the transcript, Mr. Sparks. Your client specifically demanded $50,000 or she would file false reports. That's fairly explicit. Words taken out of context, Your Honor. There was a longer conversation. That Mr. Stark also recorded in its entirety. Robbie interrupted smoothly, standing. Your Honor, if I may, we have the complete audio file. There is no context that makes pay me or I'll file false CPS reports anything other than extortion. Additionally, we have documentation of a pattern. Objection. Sparks's voice sharpened. Alleged pattern. Nothing has been proven in a court of law. Judge Briggs held up a hand. Mr. Sparks, your client has been criminally charged. Whether or not those charges result in conviction, their existence and the underlying evidence are relevant to this custody matter. Sit down. She turned to Robbie. Continue. Robbie submitted thick binders of documentation, everything Marcus had compiled over 18 months, plus Angelina's investigation findings, statements from Chelsea's previous victims, and the full recording of the extortion attempt. Judge Briggs took her time reviewing it, the courtroom silent except for rustling pages. Chelsea whispered urgently to Sparks several times, but the lawyer kept shaking his head. Whatever strategy they'd planned, it wasn't going how they'd hoped. Finally, Judge Briggs set down the documents. Ms. Orozco, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. Did you or did you not threaten to file false CPS reports unless Mr. Stark paid you $50,000? Chelsea stood, and Marcus saw her shift into her victim persona, eyes welling with tears, voice trembling. Your Honor, I was desperate. Marcus has so much money and access to Liam, and I have nothing. I haven't been able to see my son properly in months. I made a mistake in how I expressed my frustration, but it came from a place of love. That's a yes or no question, Ms. Orozco. The tears continued, but something harder flickered in Chelsea's eyes. The situation was more complicated than a simple yes or no. Try me. I may have said things I didn't mean because I was emotional. Did you threaten to file false CPS reports for money? Yes or no? A long pause. Then, barely audible, yes. The word hung in the courtroom like a bomb. Thank you for your honesty, Judge Briggs said, though her tone suggested it was anything but thanks. Mr. Sparks, does your client understand that filing false CPS reports is a crime? That weaponizing Child Protective Services not only harms the targeted parent, but also diverts resources from children in genuine danger. Your Honor, my client acknowledges she made an error in judgment. An error in judgment is forgetting to return a library book. This is conspiracy to commit fraud and child endangerment. Judge Briggs looked at Chelsea with undisguised contempt. Ms. Orozco, I've been a family court judge for 17 years. I've seen parents do terrible things to each other and, by extension, to their children. But threatening to weaponize CPS, to knowingly file false reports that could traumatize a child and destroy a parent's life, that ranks among the worst. Chelsea's tears were flowing freely now, but they looked real this time. Tears of recognition that she'd lost. I'm granting Mr. Stark's petition, Judge Briggs continued. Ms. Orozco's visitation rights are suspended pending resolution of criminal charges. Even supervised visitation is denied. She will have no contact with the minor child. Additionally, I'm referring this matter to the State Bar to investigate whether Mr. Sparks had knowledge of his client's intent to file false reports. Your Honor, Sparks was on his feet, red-faced. That's completely out of line, perhaps. But this transcript includes your client discussing this plan with you, Mr. Sparks. If you advised her that her threats constituted anything other than criminal extortion, that's a bar issue. If you didn't advise her at all, that's also a bar issue. Judge Briggs's expression was granite. I will not have my courtroom used as a platform for criminal conspiracy. She turned back to Marcus. Mr. Stark, you're granted sole legal and physical custody. Ms. Orozco will have no contact except through attorneys. Child support obligations remain in effect, though I suspect collection may prove difficult given her current legal situation. A pause. Off the record? Good job documenting everything. You probably saved your son years of trauma. Thank you, Your Honor. As they left the courtroom, Marcus heard Chelsea's voice rising behind them. Angry now, the victim mask fully discarded. This isn't over, Marcus. My family will destroy you. You'll regret this. Your client needs to be quiet, Judge Briggs's voice carried from the courtroom, or I'll hold her in contempt. Outside, Robbie allowed herself a satisfied smile. That went even better than expected. Briggs is tough, but fair, and she clearly saw through the performance. What happens now? Chelsea will probably appeal, but she won't win. The evidence is too strong, and now she's admitted to the extortion attempt in open court. Her criminal attorney is probably having a heart attack right now. Robbie's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it. Speaking of which, Angelina wants you to call her. Apparently, there's been a development. Marcus called from his car, and Angelina answered on the first ring. Good timing. I just got interesting information from the DA's office. Todd Brewer contacted them this morning requesting a meeting. He's flipping. Looks like it. His lawyer reached out about a possible cooperation agreement. Apparently, he's willing to testify against Chelsea in exchange for reduced charges. Marcus felt a grim satisfaction. There's no honor among thieves. Never is. The DA is meeting with him Monday. If his information is as valuable as they think, we'll have even more ammunition. Chelsea's web is unraveling fast. That evening, Marcus celebrated quietly with his family and Natalie. Liam, blissfully unaware of the legal drama swirling around him, was more interested in the wooden train set Renee and Austin had brought over. To victories well earned, Henry said, raising a beer bottle and toast. They clinked glasses, even Liam, with his sippy cup of milk, and Marcus felt something uncoil in his chest. Not quite relief. The criminal trial was still ahead, but something close. Safety. Security. The knowledge that his son was protected from a mother who saw him as a tool rather than a person. You know this might get uglier before it gets better, Natalie said later, after everyone had left and Liam was asleep. Chelsea's family has resources. I know, but I'm ready. I've been ready for 2 years. Promise me something? What? When this is finally over, when Chelsea's in prison and you don't have to be in survival mode anymore. Promise me you'll let yourself be happy. That you won't spend the rest of your life waiting for the next crisis. Marcus pulled her close. I promise. And it starts with us. With building something real, something healthy, something that's ours. They sat in comfortable silence, the house peaceful around them. Somewhere across town, Chelsea was probably raging at her lawyers, plotting appeals and countermoves. Todd was cutting a deal to save himself. Clark Sparks was worried about bar complaints. But in this moment, in this house, Marcus had everything that mattered. His son sleeping safely upstairs, a woman he loved beside him, and the knowledge that he'd played the long game perfectly. The worst was coming. He knew that. Chelsea's family would try something, and desperate people made dangerous moves. But Marcus was ready. He'd been ready for a long time. Chapter 6, The Final Gambit. The call came at 3 a.m, exactly 1 week after the custody hearing. Marcus jerked awake to his phone's insistent buzzing, his first panicked thought that something had happened to Liam. But his son was sleeping safely in the next room. He checked the baby monitor even as he grabbed the phone. Hello, Mr. Stark? This is Officer Dan Callahan with the Connecticut State Police. Sorry to wake you, but we have a situation involving your ex-wife. Marcus was immediately awake. What happened? Chelsea Orozco attempted to break into your residence approximately 45 minutes ago. Neighbor heard noise, called it in. Our units responded. She's currently in custody, but I need you to come down to the station to provide a statement and review security footage. Did she get inside? No, sir. Your security system worked perfectly, but we need to document this for the violation of her court order and bail conditions. An hour later, having left Liam with his parents and Natalie on emergency standby, Marcus sat in an interview room watching security footage from his home. The timestamp showed 2:17 a.m. Chelsea appeared on camera, dressed in dark clothes, trying various windows on the ground floor. She was clearly intoxicated, stumbling slightly, muttering to herself. She's saying something, Officer Callahan noted, turning up the audio. Chelsea's voice came through tinny but distinct. Think you're so smart, Marcus? Think you won? I'll take him. I'll take Liam and disappear. You'll never find us. Marcus felt ice in his veins. This wasn't anger or spite. This was intent. If his neighbor hadn't been awake, if the police hadn't responded so quickly, Chelsea might have gotten inside while he slept. We need to know if you want to press charges, Callahan said. Combined with the court order violation and bail violation, this could add serious time. Yes, absolutely yes. Figured you'd say that. For what it's worth, your security setup is solid. Cameras, alarms, reinforced locks. Someone taught you well. I taught myself. After the divorce, I made sure this place was a fortress. More footage showed the police arriving. Chelsea initially trying to run, then breaking down crying when cornered. The responding officers had handled her professionally, but it was clear she was beyond rational thought. Blood alcohol was 0.18, Callahan continued. She kept saying she just wanted to see her son, that you'd stolen him, that she was a good mother. Pretty standard stuff for these situations, honestly. What happens now? She's going before a judge later this morning for bail revocation. Given the violation and the attempted child abduction indicators, I'd say her free time is over. She'll wait for trial and lockup. By the time Marcus left the station, dawn was breaking. He stopped at a coffee shop, needing caffeine and a moment to process before heading to his parents' house. His phone had been buzzing constantly with texts from Natalie, Robbie, Angelina, even Renee. The news was already circulating. Woman arrested attempting to break into ex-husband's home, violating court order. He called Robbie first. She answered immediately. Tell me you and Liam are safe. We're fine. She never got inside. Police caught her trying windows. Thank God. Marcus, this is actually good for us. I know that sounds terrible, but her complete breakdown proves every point we've made about her instability. No judge will let her near Liam now. She was talking about taking him. About disappearing with him. Robbie's pause was heavy. Did you get that on recording? The police have it on my security footage. Forward that to me immediately. We're adding attempted parental kidnapping to the civil case. And you need to file for a permanent restraining order, not just the temporary one. Next, he called Angelina, who was equally supportive but concerned. I'm glad your security held, but Marcus, we need to talk about long-term safety. Even after she's in prison, she might have people on the outside. Family, friends, Todd if he doesn't flip completely. What are you suggesting? Move. Different house, different town even. New security protocols. Maybe even a legal name change for Liam down the road. I know it sounds extreme, but when someone threatens parental kidnapping, you take it seriously. Marcus thought about his house, the first place that had felt like home after the divorce, where Liam had taken his first steps, where he'd built a life with Natalie. The idea of abandoning it because of Chelsea's threats made him angry. But then he thought about waking up to police calls, about checking locks compulsively, about the constant low-level fear that Chelsea or someone she'd hired might try again. I'll think about it, he finally said. His parents were frantic when he arrived, Edith crushing him in a hug while Henry hovered with the particular helplessness of a man who wanted to fix things and couldn't. She tried to break into your house, Edith said, voice shaking. Marcus, she could have hurt you. Hurt Liam. But she didn't. The system worked. She's back in custody, and her bail is getting revoked. That woman is insane, Henry muttered. Completely insane. Liam, oblivious to the drama, was happy to see his father, reaching for Marcus with sticky fingers from his breakfast. Marcus held his son close, breathing in baby shampoo and maple syrup, grounding himself in what mattered. The bail hearing was brief and decisive. Chelsea's attorney, a new one, as Clark Sparks had withdrawn citing conflict of interest, argued that his client was under severe emotional distress and made a mistake. Judge Briggs, hearing the case again, was unmoved. Ms. Orozco violated a direct court order, violated her bail conditions, and was recorded explicitly threatening parental kidnapping. Bail is revoked. She'll remain in custody until trial. Chelsea's mask finally, completely shattered. She began screaming in the courtroom, had to be restrained by bailiffs, her voice echoing as they led her away. He's my son. You can't do this. Marcus poisoned everyone against me. This is all his fault. Her family, sitting in the gallery, looked shocked. Chelsea's mother, Constance Orozco, left the courtroom in tears. Her father, a distinguished man in an expensive suit, looked disgusted, whether at his daughter or the situation, Marcus couldn't tell. As they exited, Constance approached Marcus. "Mr. Stark, may I have a word?" Robbie tensed, but Marcus nodded. They stepped into an empty consultation room. "I owe you an apology," Constance said quietly. "My husband and we knew Chelsea had problems. We thought we were helping by providing her with resources, second chances. We didn't realize we were enabling a pattern that hurt innocent people." Marcus studied her, the genuine grief in her eyes, the weight of parental guilt. "Did you know about the previous victims?" "Not until recently. Our investigator compiled a report after her arrest. When we saw the evidence." She shook her head. "We've decided not to fund her defense beyond ensuring she has competent representation. What she did, threatening to weaponize CPS, attempting to break into your home, we can't support that. And we wanted you to know that we won't be interfering with the custody arrangements. Liam is better off with you." It was probably the last thing Marcus expected. "I appreciate you telling me. I also wanted to say, if you need anything, security upgrades, relocation costs, whatever helps you and Liam feel safe. My husband and I would like to help, not as a bribe or to buy access, but because we feel responsible for the pain our daughter has caused." Marcus considered refusing. Pride, independence, the desire to owe the Orozcos nothing. But he thought about Angelina's advice, about moving somewhere safer, about giving Liam the best possible fresh start. "I'll think about it," he said finally. Constance nodded and handed him a card. "Call anytime. And Mr. Stark, take care of my grandson. He deserves better than what Chelsea gave him." That night, Marcus sat with Natalie in his living room, soon to be his former living room if he took Angelina's advice, and talked through options. "I found a house in the next county," he said, pulling up listings on his laptop. "Good school district, safe neighborhood, better security infrastructure. More expensive, but with the Orozco's offer." "You're seriously considering taking their money?" "Not as a handout. As restitution for what their daughter put us through. And only if we set it up formally, through lawyers, with clear terms." Natalie studied the listing. "It's beautiful. Bigger than this place. Room for—" She trailed off. "Room for what?" She met his eyes. "Room for a family. If you ever wanted to expand it." Marcus felt his heart skip. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying I love you. I love Liam. And when this nightmare is finally over, I'd like to talk about our future seriously. Marriage, maybe more kids, building a life together." She smiled nervously. "Unless that's too much too fast." "It's not too much. It's perfect." He pulled her close. "Let's do this. New house, fresh start, actual safety. And when Chelsea's trial is over and she's in prison where she belongs, we'll start planning that future." "Deal." They sealed it with a kiss, and for the first time since Chelsea's arrest, Marcus allowed himself to imagine a future without her shadow hanging over it. A future where Liam grew up safe and loved, where Marcus didn't check security cameras compulsively, where happiness was the default instead of a temporary respite from crisis. The criminal trial was still ahead. Todd's testimony, Chelsea's likely conviction, the sentencing. But the outcome was no longer in doubt. Chelsea had finally, completely lost. Chapter 7. The prosecution builds. The trial of Chelsea Orozco began on a cold February morning, 3 months after her attempted break-in. Marcus sat in the gallery with Natalie on one side and Angelina on the other, watching as the prosecution laid out their case with methodical precision. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Marissa McKnight, opened with a statement that set the tone. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about a pattern. A calculated, deliberate pattern of manipulation, fraud, and abuse that spans nearly a decade and has left multiple victims in its wake." Over the next week, McKnight built her case piece by piece. First came Marcus's testimony, calm, factual, devastating. He walked the jury through Chelsea's neglect of Liam, the custody battle, and finally the extortion attempt. The recording was played in full, Chelsea's voice clear as she demanded money and threatened false CPS reports. "Mr. Stark," McKnight asked during direct examination, "why did you record that conversation?" "Because I knew Chelsea was planning something. I'd been documenting her behavior for over a year because I suspected she'd eventually escalate. I wanted evidence of whatever she tried, both to protect myself and my son. And when she made her threat, how did you respond?" "I stayed calm. I excused myself, made a phone call, and came back with a CPS caseworker I'd been working with who'd investigated Chelsea's pattern of filing false reports. Why not just pay her to make the problem go away? Marcus looked directly at the jury. Because paying her would have been temporary. She'd come back for more, and more, and more. The only way to truly protect my son was to end her ability to weaponize the system against us. Chelsea's defense attorney, a harried-looking man named Arturo Chapman, tried to paint Marcus as vindictive and controlling during cross-examination. Isn't it true, Mr. Stark, that you resented Ms. Orozco for wanting her freedom after having a baby? No. That you used your financial resources to isolate her from her son? No. I used documentation and legal channels to protect my son from a neglectful mother. You recorded private conversations without her knowledge. I recorded a woman threatening to commit fraud and extortion. Yes, I did that. And I'd do it again. Chapman tried several more angles, but Marcus had prepared for this. Every accusation had a documented rebuttal. Every insinuation met facts. Next came the previous victims, each one more damaging than the last. Stephen Graham testified about the fake pregnancy and financial devastation. Dwight Sawyer described the false domestic violence allegation that nearly destroyed his career. Morris Moon explained how Chelsea had drained his restaurant's account while claiming she was investing in their future. She was perfect at first, Morris said, his voice heavy with old pain. Everything I wanted. Then slowly, little requests became big demands. Money for emergencies that never seemed to be quite emergencies. When I started questioning things, she filed a police report claiming I'd assaulted her. Were those allegations true? McKnight asked. No. I was in another state at a restaurant convention. Had dozens of witnesses, credit card receipts, security footage. But by the time I proved my innocence, my reputation was ruined. I lost investors, employees quit, my business nearly went under. The jury's faces grew harder with each testimony. They were seeing the pattern McKnight had promised. A woman who used the same tactics over and over, refining her methods, leaving devastation in her wake. Then came Todd Brewer, and the courtroom tension ratcheted up several notches. Todd had taken a plea deal, testifying against Chelsea in exchange for probation and restitution payments. He looked diminished in his suit, none of the swagger Marcus remembered from Liam's birthday party. Mr. Brewer, McKnight began, how did you meet Chelsea Orozco? At a charity gala about 3 years ago. She was still married to Marcus at the time. And your relationship? We started an affair. Chelsea said her marriage was over, that Marcus was controlling and abusive. I believed her. When did you learn the truth? Todd shifted uncomfortably. Gradually. After she moved in with me, I started noticing things. She'd talk about getting money from her ex, planning ways to force custody modifications. I thought it was just anger at first, but then I saw messages on her phone discussing similar schemes with other guys. Did you confront her? Yes. She admitted she'd done it before, targeted men with money, extracted what she could, moved on. She called it survival, and said I was too privileged to understand. Why didn't you report this to authorities? Todd's face flushed. Because by then I was involved. She'd convinced me to help with some of her plans. Made me believe we were victims fighting back against unfair systems. I was an idiot. Tell the jury about the extortion plan. Chelsea had been researching Marcus for months, looking for angles. She knew he was a good father, that his documentation was solid, so she couldn't win custody legally. The blackmail was her nuclear option, threatened something so terrifying that he'd pay just to make it go away. Did you try to stop her? I told her it was a bad idea. That Marcus was too smart, too prepared. She wouldn't listen. She said men like him always folded when you threatened their kids. Todd looked at Marcus. I'm sorry. I should have gone to the police then. Chapman's cross-examination was brutal. Mr. Brewer, you took a plea deal to avoid prison, correct? Yes. So you're testifying against Ms. Orozco to save yourself? I'm testifying because what we did was wrong. Chelsea's still my responsibility, even if I didn't do everything she did. Convenient timing for your conscience. Maybe, but it doesn't change the facts. The trial continued with Angelina's testimony about Chelsea's pattern of false CPS reports, forensic accountants detailing financial fraud, and finally, the security footage from the attempted break-in. Watching Chelsea stumble around his house, muttering about kidnapping Liam, the jury's expressions shifted from skeptical to horrified to disgusted. Chelsea took the stand in her own defense, against her attorney's visible advice. She wore another modest outfit, had clearly been crying before entering the courtroom. But her testimony was a disaster. Ms. Orozco, Chapman began carefully. Tell the jury about your relationship with your son. Liam is my everything, Chelsea said, voice trembling. I love him more than anything. Being separated from him has been the worst pain of my life. Why did you have limited custody? Marcus convinced the courts I was a bad mother. He had money, resources, fancy lawyers. I was just a struggling single mom trying to see my baby. McKnight's cross-examination demolished that narrative. Ms. Orozco, is it true you missed 18 of 24 scheduled supervised visits with your son? I had reasons. What reasons? I was dealing with a lot. Emotional stress, financial problems. Problems severe enough to miss time with the son you claim to love more than anything? You don't understand. Help me understand. On October 3rd, you missed a visit to attend a party in Manhattan. On October 17th, you missed a visit to get spa treatments. On November 2nd, the week before your son's birthday, you missed a visit to go shopping with friends. Help me understand how these activities were more important than seeing Liam. Chelsea's mask began cracking. I needed to maintain my life, my social connections. More than you needed to see your son? That's not what I meant. Let's talk about the recording. Did you threaten to file false CPS reports unless Mr. Stark paid you $50,000? I was emotional. I didn't mean. Yes or no? It was taken out of context. The jury has heard the full recording. There's no context that makes extortion legal. Did you threaten false CPS reports for money? Yes or no? A long, damning pause. Then, yes. But I didn't mean it. You broke into Mr. Stark's house at 2 in the morning. Were you trying to kidnap Liam? I just wanted to see him. Through a locked window? While violating a court order and bail conditions. I wasn't thinking clearly. No, Ms. Orozco. You were thinking very clearly. You were thinking that if you could get to Liam before anyone stopped you, you could disappear with him and Mr. Stark would never find you. That's what you said on the security footage, isn't it? Chelsea's composure shattered completely. She started crying, then screaming, then had to be removed from the courtroom by bailiffs. Her testimony ended in chaos, her defense in ruins. The closing arguments were almost anticlimactic. McKnight summarized the evidence, a pattern spanning a decade, multiple victims, clear intent, documented threats. Chapman tried to paint Chelsea as a troubled woman who made mistakes but wasn't a criminal. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Chapter 8, Reckoning. The sentencing hearing was held 2 weeks later. Marcus sat in the same gallery seat, but this time he'd brought a victim impact statement. He'd never been one for public speeches, but this needed to be said. Judge Briggs, who'd been assigned the criminal case after the custody issues, listened as Prosecutor McKnight recommended a significant prison term. Your Honor, the defendant shows no remorse, no recognition of the harm she's caused. She's a danger to anyone who becomes romantically involved with her, and more importantly, a danger to the child welfare system she's weaponized. Then it was the victim's turn. Stephen Graham spoke about the years of debt, the trust issues that destroyed subsequent relationships. Dwight Sawyer described losing his business and reputation. Morris Moon talked about bankruptcy and depression. Finally, Marcus stood. Your Honor, I'm not going to talk about myself. I documented everything. I protected myself. I won in court. But I want to talk about the person who couldn't protect themselves. My son, Liam. He's 18 months old now. He doesn't know his mother because she chose Instagram and parties over him. He doesn't know that someone who should love him unconditionally saw him as a tool for extortion. And he won't know any of that unless I tell him someday, which breaks my heart. Chelsea didn't just threaten me. She threatened the very system meant to protect children like Liam. Every false CPS report ties up investigators who should be saving kids in real danger. Every fake allegation makes it harder for actual victims to be believed. The harm she's caused extends far beyond the people in this courtroom. I don't want revenge. I want my son to grow up safe, with the chance to have a normal life without looking over his shoulder. I want other men to be warned before they fall into Chelsea's trap. And I want the child welfare system to be used for its intended purpose, protecting children, not as a weapon for extortion. Whatever sentence you impose, Your Honor, I hope it accomplishes those things. He sat down, Natalie squeezing his hand. Chelsea's family was absent. They'd washed their hands of her after seeing the evidence. Only Todd sat in the gallery, looking haunted, waiting for his own sentencing next month. Chelsea stood for sentencing looking nothing like the glamorous influencer from her social media. Prison jumpsuit, no makeup, hair pulled back. She tried to speak, to offer some explanation or apology, but Judge Briggs cut her off. Ms. Orozco, I've presided over many cases in my career. I've seen parents do terrible things, abuse, neglect, violence. But what you've done is uniquely destructive because of its calculated nature. You didn't harm out of passion or ignorance. You weaponized systems meant to protect the vulnerable, and you did it repeatedly, methodically, without remorse. You're sentenced to 8 years in state prison on the extortion charges, 3 years for fraud charges to run consecutively, and an additional 2 years for the attempted breaking and entering and violation of court orders. Total, 13 years, with possibility of parole after 9 years contingent on demonstrated rehabilitation. Additionally, you're ordered to pay restitution to each of your victims. Your parental rights to Liam Stark are permanently terminated. You will have no contact with him or Mr. Stark upon release unless a future court orders otherwise, which I find highly unlikely. I hope you use your time in prison to reflect on the harm you've caused. You're 32 years old. You'll be in your mid-40s when released. That's young enough to rebuild a life if you choose to. But that life will not include the son you neglected or the man you threatened. Chelsea was led away without incident this time, her fight finally gone. Marcus felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just relief and exhaustion. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Marcus had agreed to one brief statement. I'm grateful to the justice system for protecting my son and preventing Chelsea Orozco from harming anyone else. I'm grateful to the real heroes in this story, the CPS workers who investigated false claims while still helping real children, the previous victims who found the courage to testify, and the legal professionals who saw through manipulation to find truth. To anyone else being threatened or blackmailed by an ex-partner, document everything. Reach out to professionals. Don't pay to make problems go away. The legal system isn't perfect, but it works when you give it the evidence it needs. And to Liam, when you're old enough to understand this, I fought for you because you deserved better. You'll always deserve better. That's what love looks like, protecting someone even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. He declined further questions and left with Natalie, ready to finally close this chapter. Chapter 9, New Beginnings. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the backyard of his new house, watching Liam chase butterflies through the garden Natalie had planted. The house was in a quiet Connecticut suburb, far enough from the old neighborhood to feel like a fresh start, but close enough to his parents that they could visit regularly. He's going to sleep well tonight, Natalie said, joining him with 2 glasses of iced tea. She wore a sundress and a smile, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look younger than her years. 3 hours at the playground will do that. Marcus accepted the tea, pulling her close. Thank you. For what? For staying through all of it. The trial, the media attention, the stress. A lot of people would have walked away. A lot of people aren't in love with you and that amazing kid. She gestured at Liam, who discovered a ladybug and was attempting to show it to a very patient golden retriever puppy Marcus had adopted last month. Besides, I saw who you really were during all that. Someone who protects the people he loves, who plans ahead, who does hard things because they're right. That's exactly the kind of man I want to build a life with. Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box, and felt his heart race. Speaking of building a life, Natalie's eyes went wide. I know the timing isn't traditional. We've known each other just over a year, and most of that was spent dealing with Chelsea's chaos. But I also know that you're the person I want beside me for everything that comes next. The good days and the hard ones, the boring Tuesday nights and the big adventures. He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring. Natalie Marks, will you marry me? She was crying and nodding before he finished. Yes, absolutely yes. Liam, sensing something important was happening, Toddle ran over and grabbed Marcus's leg. Marcus scooped him up with one arm while sliding the ring onto Natalie's finger with the other hand, creating an awkward 3-person hug that ended with the puppy barking and jumping around their legs. Family, Liam said clearly, one of his new favorite words. That's right, buddy, Marcus said, voice thick with emotion. Family. Later that evening, after Liam was asleep and the puppy had exhausted itself, Marcus and Natalie sat on their porch swing watching fireflies. Your mom is going to lose her mind when we tell her, Natalie said, admiring her ring. She's been losing her mind for months, asking when I was going to make an honest woman of you. Direct quote. When should we do it? The wedding? Whenever you want. Small, big, courthouse, destination. I just want to be married to you. Small, Natalie said immediately. Family and close friends. Maybe autumn, here in the yard. Nothing elaborate, just people we love and good food, and Liam in a tiny suit. Perfect. They sat in comfortable silence until Natalie said, Have you heard anything about Chelsea? Marcus rarely thought about his ex-wife anymore. She'd become a cautionary tale rather than an active threat. Angelina mentioned she's in a medium security facility upstate. Apparently, she's been trying to build a social media presence from prison, playing victim about unjust incarceration and parental alienation. Does anyone believe her? A few people, I guess. There's always someone willing to believe a pretty woman claiming persecution. But most people see through it, especially since all the court documents are public record. The internet has surprisingly little patience for women who weaponize CPS. Good. Natalie shifted to face him. Are you okay with Liam never knowing her? Marcus had thought about this question extensively. I'll tell him the truth when he's old enough, that his mother wasn't capable of being a good parent, that I had to protect him, that sometimes love means making hard choices. But I won't let him grow up feeling like he's missing something. He has you, my parents, our friends. He has a family that loves him. And someday maybe siblings. Marcus felt hope bloom in his chest. You want kids? With you? Absolutely. Not right away. Let's get married. Let Liam adjust, build our foundation. But yes, I want to expand this family we're creating. They sealed it with a kiss as fireflies danced around them, and somewhere inside, their son slept peacefully, unaware of how close he'd come to a very different life. 3 years later, Marcus woke to tiny hands patting his face. Dada, wake up. Liam was 4 now, all energy and questions and joy. What's up, buddy? Mama says breakfast is ready. And Emmy is crying. Marcus groaned and checked the clock, 6:30 a.m., which counted as sleeping in with 2 kids. He found Natalie in the kitchen, their 6-month-old daughter Emmy on her hip, while she flipped pancakes one-handed with the expertise of an experienced mother. Morning, she said, accepting his kiss. Coffee's fresh. Pancakes are almost done, and your son has decided he wants to be a dinosaur today. Specifically a stegosaurus, Liam added helpfully. Because they have the best plates. This was life now. Chaotic, exhausting, perfect. Marcus's career had flourished. He'd been promoted to senior analyst, and now worked mostly from home, giving him flexibility with the kids. Natalie had opened a small art studio in town, teaching classes and selling her paintings. They'd bought the house outright with careful saving and the restitution payments from Chelsea and Todd. Speaking of which, did you see the notification from the court? Natalie asked. Marcus had. Chelsea's up for early parole review. She won't get it, but she can apply. And if she does get out eventually? Permanent restraining order, no contact provision, and she doesn't know where we live. Plus, I've got updated security and a very protective German Shepherd. They'd upgraded from the Golden Retriever puppy to Ranger, a trained guard dog who was currently letting Liam use him as a pillow. Do you ever regret it? The way things went down. Marcus looked at his family, Natalie making pancakes, Emmy cooing happily, Liam explaining dinosaur taxonomy to a patient dog, the home they'd built together, and felt zero regret. Not for a second. Everything I did, I'd do again. Because this right here? This was worth fighting for. Good answer. Natalie set down plates. Now eat before it gets cold, and then you're on diaper duty. I have a commission to finish. Deal. As they sat down to breakfast, Liam announced, When I grow up, I'm going to be a dinosaur scientist and protect people like Daddy does. Marcus felt his throat tighten with pride. You can be anything you want, Liam. That's what I've been fighting for you to have choices, to be safe, to grow up knowing you're loved. I know, Dada. You tell me every night. And I'll keep telling you. Every single night. Outside, the autumn sun rose over their neighborhood, painting everything gold. Inside, the Stark family ate breakfast together, secure in the knowledge that they'd weathered the storm and built something real on the other side. Chelsea Orozco was a memory now, a cautionary tale, a bad chapter in a story that had found its happy ending. Marcus had been tested and proven himself, not just as a father or a partner, but as someone who could play the long game. keep his head when everything was chaos, and protect the people he loved without becoming the villain of his own story. He'd won not through rage or revenge, but through patience, planning, and an unshakable belief that truth and documentation would prevail over manipulation and lies. And in the end, he hadn't just won. He'd built something better than winning. He'd built a family. Epilogue. 10 years later. Liam was 14 now, tall and thoughtful, more interested in coding than dinosaurs, but still passionate about justice. Emmy was 10, creative and fearless like her mother. The youngest, Marcus Jr., called MJ, was 6 and currently convinced he could train the family cat to do tricks. Marcus sat on his porch, gray threading through his hair now, watching his kids play basketball in the driveway. Natalie emerged with 2 glasses of wine. They got the verdict today, she said quietly. Marcus knew what she meant. After years of appeals, Chelsea's sentence had been upheld by the state Supreme Court. She'd serve every day of her 13 years, with the earliest possible parole now 11 years away, when Liam would be 25 and hopefully established in his own life. How do you feel? Natalie asked. Grateful. That we're here, that the kids are healthy and happy, that Chelsea never got the chance to hurt any of them. He took a sip of wine. Sometimes I think about other victims who weren't as prepared, who paid her off or believed her threats. How many lives did she damage before someone finally stopped her? You can't save everyone, Marcus. You saved the people you could, yourself, Liam, her future victims. That's enough. It had to be enough. Because Marcus had learned something important through all of it. You can't control other people's choices, only your own response to them. Chelsea had chosen manipulation and cruelty. He'd chosen documentation and patience. Both of their choices had consequences. Hers led to prison. His led to this. A warm autumn evening. The sound of his children's laughter, the woman he loved beside him, and the deep satisfaction of knowing he'd protected what mattered most. Race you to the hoop. Liam called out. You're on. Marcus set down his wine and jogged to the driveway, his kids immediately swarming him with competitive energy. Later, when the stars came out and the kids were in bed, Marcus stood in Liam's doorway watching his son sleep. At 14, Liam looked so much like Marcus at that age. Same dark hair, same thoughtful expression even in sleep. You did good, Dada, came a sleepy voice. Marcus stepped into the room. Thought you were asleep. Almost. Just thinking about stuff. What stuff? You never talk about my birth mom. Is it because it hurts? Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, choosing his words carefully. It's because that story doesn't define us. Yes, she was troubled. Yes, I had to protect you from her. But dwelling on it gives her power she doesn't deserve. You want to know about her someday. Really know. I'll tell you everything. But for now, all you need to know is that you've always been loved, always been wanted, and always been worth fighting for. Liam was quiet for a moment. Kids at school sometimes ask why my mom isn't my birth mom. I tell them that family is who shows up. Mama showed up. You showed up. That's what counts. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. That's exactly right. Love you, Dada. Love you too, son. Always will. He closed the door and found Natalie waiting in the hallway. She'd heard the conversation, had tears in her own eyes. Our kids turned out pretty good, she whispered. They did. We did. They stood in their quiet hallway. The house they'd built together settled around them like a protective embrace. Outside, the world turned. Chelsea served her time in prison, perhaps learning, perhaps not. Todd had rebuilt a quiet life after his probation ended, staying far from romantic entanglements. The victims had healed, some better than others. But inside this house, the Stark family thrived. And that was the real victory, not just stopping someone bad, but building something good. Not just protecting from harm, but creating joy. Not just surviving a nightmare, but forging a dream. Marcus Stark had set a trap for a predator and won. But more importantly, he'd built a life worth protecting. And every day, watching his kids grow and his marriage strengthen and his family flourish, he was reminded that the best revenge wasn't destruction. It was happiness. Pure, hard-won, well-deserved happiness. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.